You know the feeling. We've all been there. Your head is pounding, you're surrounded by a mountain of tissues, and you have that awful, totally plugged up nose. You finally drag yourself to the pharmacy looking for relief, but the stuff that actually works seems to be locked away. Well, let's get into the fascinating and kind of complex story behind your go-to cold medicine.
Right? It's such a common thing. You go ask the pharmacist for the good stuff, and all of a sudden, you're in a high-security transaction. You got to hand over your driver's license, they're typing your info into a computer, and this is all just for a simple decongestant. So why? Well, the answer is this really wild mix of medicine, chemistry, and, you guessed it, the law.
Okay, so before we talk about the fix, let's talk about the problem. When you feel stuffy, what do you think is going on? You probably think your nose is just packed with mucus, right? But that's only like half the story. The real villain here is something else entirely.
Yup, it's inflammation. When you've got a cold or allergies, the blood vessels inside your nose get super swollen and dilated. The best way to think about it is like a 5-lane highway suddenly getting squeezed down to just 1 lane. It creates this massive traffic jam right in your head, and that is what blocks up the airflow and makes you feel so miserable.
For decades, the undisputed champion of clearing out that nasal traffic jam has been one single, really powerful ingredient: pseudoephedrine. It's been the key to actually breathing freely again when you're sick. Now, I know, that sounds incredibly complicated, but the idea behind it is actually pretty simple. Vasoconstrictor just means it shrinks your blood vessels. That's it. So if those swollen vessels are the traffic jam, pseudoephedrine is like the expert traffic cop who shows up, clears the lanes, and gets everything moving again. It basically mimics your body's fight or flight response, but does it in a very, very targeted way.
So how does it actually pull this off? Let's walk through it. First, the pseudoephedrine latches onto these specific little receptors in the walls of those blood vessels. This tells the muscles in the vessel walls to tighten up, which physically squeezes them and makes them narrower. As they get smaller, less blood can flow through, which causes that swollen tissue to shrink down dramatically. And boom, just like that, the highway is open again and you can finally take a deep, satisfying breath through your nose. It's a seriously effective little mechanism.
But, and you knew there was a but coming, with any powerful solution, there's usually a catch. And pseudoephedrine's incredible effectiveness comes with a whole range of side effects. Some of them are what you'd expect, and one of them changed everything. Because pseudoephedrine kicks your body's fight or flight system into gear, it doesn't just work on your nose. It can also make you feel kind of jittery or restless. It can definitely keep you up at night, and for some people, it can even raise your heart rate and your blood pressure. You know, these are the typical things you might see on the warning label. But the biggest complication, the one that put your cold medicine behind the counter, has absolutely nothing to do with how it affects your body when you take it like you're supposed to.
And here it is. This is the heart of the problem. The very same chemical structure that makes pseudoephedrine so incredibly good at clearing your sinuses also makes it the perfect starting ingredient, what's called a precursor chemical, for making the highly addictive and really dangerous illegal drug methamphetamine. This is the dark side, the unintended consequence that changed the fate of cold medicine forever. So, as you can imagine, faced with a growing meth epidemic that was literally being fueled by cold medicine you could buy anywhere, lawmakers had to step in. And their solution was to completely change how we get our hands on this stuff.
In the U.S., the big change came from a federal law called the Combat Methamphetamine Epidemic Act of 2005. This one law is the entire reason that pseudoephedrine went from being on the shelf, where you could just grab it yourself, to being locked up behind the pharmacy counter.
And this law got super specific. It put strict limits on how much you can buy. For one, you're capped at 3.6 grams of pseudoephedrine in a single day. The idea was to stop people from being able to buy huge quantities all at once.
And it didn't stop there. They also limited you to just 9 grams over a 30-day period. To actually enforce this, pharmacies have to log every single sale, check your photo ID, and all that data goes into a system to track purchases and flag anything that looks suspicious.
So what about all those other cold medicines that are still out on the shelves? Well, most of them swapped out pseudoephedrine for something called phenylephrine. And here's the problem. It just doesn't work that well when you take it in a pill. The key difference is a term called bioavailability. Your body is really good at absorbing pseudoephedrine and putting it to work. But with phenylephrine, your gut and your liver basically destroy most of it before it ever even reaches your bloodstream. Some studies have even said it's no more effective than a sugar pill, a placebo.
So all of this brings us to the central conflict of the story. We're dealing with a medicine that's living this strange kind of double life.
It really all comes down to this. On the one hand, you've got this incredibly potent and effective medical tool that brings real relief to millions of people. But on the other hand, that very same tool has this dark shadow hanging over it because it can be used for such a destructive purpose.
And that leaves us with a really tough question, doesn't it? What's the right balance here? The system we have now makes it harder for everybody to get the medicine that works best, all in an effort to stop a few people from abusing it. Is that the right trade-off? It's a seriously complex problem with no easy answer, and it all started from something as simple as wanting to cure a stuffy nose.